يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم القصاص في القتلى الحر بالحر والعبد بالعبد والأنثى بالأنثى فمن عفي له من أخيه شيء فاتباع بالمعروف وأداء إليه بإحسان ذلك تخفيف من ربكم ورحمة فمن اعتدى بعد ذلك فله عذاب أليم ولكم في القصاص حياة يا أولي الألباب لعلكم تتقون رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي فالحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ثم أما بعد. Once again everyone, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today some commentary on two ayat of Surah Al-Baqarah, ayahs number 178 and 179. These are ayat that follow right after one of the longer ayat of Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayatul Bir, which is a comprehensive view of goodness in the Quran. Allah Azza wa Jal in the early part, or this is the second half of Surah Al-Baqarah, and in the early part of it, Allah Azza wa Jal gave us a set of ahkam, set of rulings that govern the basics of Muslim society. And this is actually a really interesting placement in Surah Al-Baqarah, because if you look on the exact opposite side, on the first half of Surah Al-Baqarah, you'll find the laws that were given to Banu Israel and how they messed them up. So on the one hand, you have the Israelites and what they messed up, and on the other hand, it's the new people, the new ummah, the Muslims, and the laws that they're given, they better not mess them up. Right? So we're being given the second chance. They lost their opportunity, now it's our turn to prove ourselves. That's how the surah is kind of structured, or at least some hints into the structure of this remarkable surah. Anyhow, the laws that we're going to talk about today, that were mandated in this Medinan life, are actually called the laws of qisas. Qisas is commonly translated as retribution or blood money. You may have heard the word blood money before, okay? And what the idea is, the biblical term is eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. So if, for example, if you kill, you should be killed. And if you kill two, or if you took an eye, then your eye should be taken. If you cut a hand, your hand should be cut, etc. So this is equal retribution, right? So this is the Quran's version of that, that's completing and perfecting what was given in the people before. You should know some background. The Arabs were a very angry people. So when they get into a fight, they really get into a fight. So if you kill somebody's sheep, they might kill your whole village. And for 3 generations, they might just keep coming after you because you killed their sheep or something. They get pretty serious. Okay, so they didn't just stop at one point, and they just the revenge kept going and the anger kept going, right? And that kind of thug mentality still exists. You touch one of my people, I'm going to take you all out, or something. They had this attitude that we're going to take revenge, and there's no end to our rage. As a matter of fact, even in unjustified war, you might have cases where there's one nation attacking the other, or there's some political incident out at sea, or some incident of a crime against an embassy or something like that, and a few people are killed, and as a result, in response, thousands of people are murdered with carpet bombs or some other crazy thing. So this is actually the lopsided kind of justice that exists today, where one life is not worth another life, right? And of course, in modern language, we live in the United States of America, where a life is actually, the worth of a life is very relative. And the morality that is associated with the worth of a life it's incredible how hypocritical it is. So for example, if an American is killed somewhere in, the Middle East, if an American is killed in the Muslim world, somewhere, there's an uproar. But if an American is killed in downtown Baltimore, nobody knows about it or cares, because they come from a minority community, low-income neighborhood. People get shot there all the time, no big deal. So you have this, whatever can be sensationalized, and as a result, by the way, if one of ours was killed, we'll take 100 of theirs, or we'll do, all of that. But even actually within the United States, there's this hypocrisy of what life matters and what life doesn't matter. And it's not just an American governmental hypocrisy. People just generally, we're so duped into what we're fed all the time by media, what life matters and what life doesn't matter, right? And the value of human life is just trivialized. And of course, when you see murder on TV all the time, not only in entertainment, but even in the news, this many people killed, that many people killed, they just become numbers. They don't really mean anything. Like, you can't process what that could mean, So now in the Arab context, the value of human life, Yeah, when it came to revenge, your honor was far more important than human life. You could kill out of rage and out of protecting the dignity of your tribe, etc. And these feuds could go on for ages and ages. And Allah is now going to change that cultural mindset. So before we get into this ayah, I want to talk a little bit, very quickly, about what it takes to change a culture. Culture is not easily changed. When people have a certain mentality, certain emotions that they are raised with, certain things that make them angry, that have always made them angry, that used to make their parents angry and their grandparents angry, and they were raised with the same anger, you can't just get it out of their system. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen that way. It takes a long time before you can make a change in a person's culture, in an entire society's culture. As a matter of fact, when people became Muslim, as people became Muslim and completely submitted themselves to Allah, they were willing to die for the sake of Allah on the battlefield. Even then, Allah did not see it fit that He should reveal laws about alcohol yet. Because even though they're shown commitment to Allah to give up their life, a cultural practice that's a part of their family tradition and everybody does it is drinking, they're not ready to quit that yet. It was given in stages. It wasn't given right away. Because some things you can't just give up right away. It takes time. And Allah Azza wa Jalla in His wisdom knew that. Even for the best generation, He took His time. This is why you think about the statement of Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, لو أول ما نزل من القرآن لا تشربوا الخمر لقلنا والله لن نترك الخمر أبدا. If the first thing Quran said was don't drink alcohol, we would have said, Wallahi, we're never going to leave alcohol. What are you talking about? We weren't ready for that yet. A mindset has to be developed, right? So even for a person to make changes, it takes time. Can you imagine for a society? It takes a long time for a society to make changes, right? Now the other thing that's often not appreciated or not understood is that people say that, the Meccan Quran, the Meccan Seerah was about building Iman. And then in Medina, we had the laws and the rules. And so the rule is, first you have to have Iman, and when your Iman is strong, then you can follow the rules. And this is an oversimplification that can be pretty dangerous. Let me tell you something that's going to reverse engineer this idea. The most difficult time to be Muslim was not Medina. The most difficult time to be Muslim was in Mecca. In Mecca, for a long time, there was no 5 daily prayer. There was no zakat. There was no laws of halal and haram meat. There was no laws of hijab. Actually, they came in the 16th year, which means a few years after the Prophet moved to Medina, right? There were no laws about alcohol. There was nothing about riba. There was nothing about swine. It was like, but why? How can you get in trouble for being Muslim? You don't do anything. Like if you saw a Sahabi from the 2nd year, 3rd year, then you wouldn't be able to tell what makes them Muslim. You wouldn't be able to tell. They don't do any things that we do. There's no 5 daily prayers yet. There's no fasting in Ramadan yet. There's nothing. So what makes them Muslim? As a matter of fact, the fact that they stood up for this belief in one God, the fact that they said we're not going to sit quiet if you kill baby girls alive. They stood up for injustice in society because of their Islam. They couldn't see injustice in society. That's what made them public enemy number 1. As a matter of fact, compare their life to what they lived in Medina. Medina is way easier. It is much easier. But somebody says, no, but the battles happened in Medina. Medina is a lot harder because we had to fight on the battlefield. We didn't have to fight on the battlefield in Mecca. I would argue, actually, that's not true either. Tell me something. If somebody's about to hit you, what's a natural response? At least put your hand up. At least. And thereafter, an understandable response is you fight them back. So the first natural response is you defend yourself. At least put your hand up. And secondly, it's understandable that you'll fight back and retaliate, because they're going to kill you. If you don't fight back, they might kill you. What happens in Mecca? What is the requirement from Allah? أَلَمْ تَرَ إِلَى الَّذِينَ قِيلَ لَهُمْ كُفُّوا أَيْدِيَكُمْ. Did you look at those who were told, hold your hands back? So when you're taking a beating, what should you do? Don't even defend yourself. Don't even defend yourself. At least and by the way, when the fighting was allowed, and I'm using the word allowed on purpose, in Medina, أُذِنَ لِلَّذِينَ. The word udhina was used by Allah. Finally, permission is given, you can fight back now. Now you compare. You are being beat up and you can't even fight back. You're not allowed to fight, but just have sabr. Just have sabr. Your family is being ripped to shreds and you're told, isbiru ala Yasir. Just have patience, family of Yasir. Just have patience. And on the other hand, you can finally fight those who kicked you out of your homes. You can finally fight those who've been fighting you. Which one is easier?
Well, think about that. Subhanallah. So Makkah is much harder. Makkah is much harder. And to say Makkah is the time where Allah just talked about Iman. And eventually the hard rules came in Medina. This is complete nonsense when you study the seerah. Makkah is a time where Iman was built after having made the toughest sacrifices. Iman didn't come cheap. Iman did not come cheap. And then when these regulations came, this was actually يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُخَفِّفَ عَنْكُمْ. Allah wants to make things easier for you. Life in Medina is way easier than life in Makkah. That's why actually you don't have munafiqun in Makkah. There's no advantage to becoming Muslim in Makkah. What are you going to join for? So you can join the beatdown too for yourself? But when you join the Muslims in Medina, then أَلَمْ نَكُمْ مَعَكُمْ. Can we also come up? Weren't we with you? بَلْ تَحْسُدُونَنَا. Hey, let us come with you. No, you don't let us come with you. Are you jealous of us? The munafiqun would also want to join the battle because they know something at the end will come their way. They'll get some worldly advantages too. Subhanallah. So it is an oversimplification of the seerah that we look at it in that way. Anyway, these ahkam have now come to a people that are firm in Iman. They've been tried and tested. And now these regulations are given so they can pass them down generation after generation. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kutiba alaykumul qisas. Those of you who have Iman, those of you who claim to believe, the law of qisas, qassa means to cut. The law of cutting evenly has been mandated on you. Qassa also means to follow in precise footsteps. In other words, what was done must be retributed exactly and precisely. Now Allah says, fil qatla, in the matter of those who are killed. Al-qatla. Okay. Now, the word al-maqtul in Arabic means the one who's killed. Al-qatla is the larger word for any who gets killed. Al-maqtul would be a specific person. Al-qatla, generally speaking, across the board, any who get murdered. In other words, Allah is not making a distinction between Muslim and non-Muslim. Anybody who gets killed, there's going to be qisas. All human life has been given a value. All human life. The blood of a mushrik is not cheaper. It's also a child of Adam. The Christian is not cheaper blood. The Jew is not cheaper blood. It's also a child of Adam. You can't just take their life either. It didn't create this dichotomy of more valuable human life versus less valuable human life. There's the power of Quran. Then he says, Al-hurru bil-hurri, wal-abdu bil-abdi, wal-untha bil-untha. Now this part is very commonly misunderstood, and there is some problematic commentary in some of the classical tafsir also. I'll explain to you from a linguistic perspective what are some of the most powerful arguments on this. But first let me translate. The free one for the free one, and the slave for the slave, and the woman for the woman. Now when you translate it like that, there's a problem. Because when you translate it like that, imagine a situation, because back in the day, now we don't have slaves, alhamdulillah, but back in the day you have a guy and you have a slave and you have 3 classes of citizens are being described. A free man, slave, and woman. Imagine a free man killed a slave. Free man killed a slave. But the ayah says a free man should only pay by what? Free man. So the one who was killed was a slave. So you can't kill a free man, that's a different category. So you should actually, the free man should get you a slave that you can kill in his place. Because free man for free man, and slave for slave. And woman for woman. So if a woman killed, or a woman got killed, then a woman should be killed. That's not what the ayah is saying. And how do we know the ayah is not saying that? Because of lam al-ta'rif. The word al, the Arabic prefix al, is used on both. If you said hurrun bi hurrin, abdun bi abdin, untha bi untha, then it would be actually a slave for a slave. Like I translated it in English. A free man for a free man. A woman for a woman. An eye for an eye. An eye, not the eye. An eye for an eye. But it's not an, it's the. Now what that does is, it's actually referring to the same thing twice. Now let me translate in English parlance so it's easier to understand. The free man will have to pay by himself. In other words, if the free man has killed, then the only one who will stand trial and face the judgment will be who? Himself. He himself, nobody else. The slave, if he is killed, you say, well, this is a very valuable slave. Why don't you take the cheaper slave, kill him instead? No. That slave will have to pay himself for what he did. In other words, nobody will stand trial in your place. Instead of the ayah referring to the murder victim, it's actually referring to the perpetrator. Al-hurru bil-hurri, wal-abdu bil-abdi, wal-untha bil-untha. And a woman for a woman. For the woman will pay by herself. You cannot take, if an elite tribeswoman has committed a crime, she's a wealthy woman, And you say, well, take some other woman from the tribe. Don't leave her alone. She's from a wealthy status. No. This principle is not just, by the way, in the ayah it's about qisas, but from it we actually learn something much larger. It's much larger. Double standards in the law. Allah talks about double standards in the law exhaustively in the Quran. And there are a couple of ayat that are very comprehensive on the subject. This is not the time for them. But I'll give you the gist of it. You have in the criminal justice system in the United States, other Western nations, other nations around the world, somebody steals. Let's say they steal from a grocery store. Right? They just stole some Kit Kat or something. And now they're standing in front of a judge. And the lawyer says, well, this boy had a very tough childhood. He comes from a difficult neighborhood. His single parent family. His mom, has been working 18 hours a day. He has no parental supervision. And please show him some leniency because he doesn't have a fair chance in society. He didn't get a fair shake, so go easy on him. Right? So the law will apply easier on this kid because he had a tough circumstance. Right? On the opposite end of this spectrum is somebody who comes from a very wealthy background and stole a Kit Kat because it was fun, for the thrills. Right? But he's the governor's kid. So now you should go easy on him because it looks bad for the public. It's bad morale, it's bad press. And the judge is like, I don't know if we should do this to him. So the law can bend because the judge is lenient in one favor or lenient in the other favor. And the law is kind of flexible. It bends sometimes in the favor of the wealthy, sometimes in the favor of the poor. It can happen, And both of those extremes can exist in society, and both of them are talked about, one in Surah An-Nisa, the other in Surah Al-Ma'idah. So that both of those inclinations that can take away from justice have been removed. But now in this ayah, law is law, especially when it comes to human life. And this is very powerful because in other matters of law, there's leniency. But when it comes to human life, Allah did not give leniency. When it comes to human life. Al-hurru bil-hurr, wal-abdu bil-abd, wal-untha bil-untha. فَمَنْ عُفِيَ لَهُ مِنْ أَخِيهِ شَيْءٌ يعني عُفِيَ شَيْءٌ لَهُ مِنْ أَخِيهِ. When something has been forbidden for this person's case by his brother. Such amazing language. It's so amazing. Allah is talking about the guy who's standing trial, who's supposed to be killed because he committed murder. And Allah says his brother pardoned something from him. You know who his brother is? Let me tell you who his brother is. So this guy, A, killed B. And B has family, yes? And the family is sitting in trial. And the family that's sitting in trial says, we want to forgive A. We don't want him to get the death penalty, we want to forgive him. Those family, they're not his family. They're the family of the victim. They're not the family of the killer. But in the Quran, Allah calls the one who let him go, Akhihi. Akhihi. His brother. This is his brother. Subhanallah. Allah, first of all, describing the unity of the ummah, even in case of murder. He's killed your family member, he's still your brother in Islam. Iman is stronger than blood. Just in the word akhihi. And he couldn't forgive him entirely, he pardoned somewhat. In other words, there are three options. Three options. What are those three options? You can either demand eye for an eye, life for a life. The second, you can demand, فَاتِّبَاعٌ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَأَدَاءٌ إِلَيْهِ بِإِحْسَانٍ. You can forgive altogether. Like لَا شَيْءٌ يعني تَمَامًا. He just completely forgave the person. We don't want anything. The third could be what you could call in modern language, I'm suing this person. I'm taking a lawsuit. I want damages. You killed the provider in our family. You killed the breadwinner in our family. You killed our son who was taking care of us. Now there's a loss in the family. We don't know how to get that taken care of. You're going to pay those damages. You're going to make up for what you've done. So those are the three kinds of options. But who's been given those options? His brother. Meaning the fellow Muslim who's the mazloom, right? The family of the mazloom. Bil-ma'ruf. Now, فَاتِّبَاعٌ بِالْمَعْرُوف, then that should be followed in a way that everybody recognizes. In other words, the entire society should recognize that these people have a right to demand whatever damages they have the right to demand. وَأَدَاءٌ إِلَيْهِ بِإِحْسَانٍ, and those damages should be paid with ihsan. Who's going to pay those damages? The murderer. Now look at the incredible language of the Quran. On the one hand, there is law. I hope I get to explain this properly. On the one hand, there is law, and on the other hand, there is reform. When somebody gets a jail sentence, that's the law. They're going to go to jail. But that person who goes to jail is a human being. And if they go to jail, their character deteriorates. They're around criminals for years. And they come back and there's a revolving door. They get back into crime when they come back again. So you implemented the law, but there is no room for these people who committed a crime to get better, to become better people. Allah is expecting people who have committed murder, ada'un ilayhi bi ihsan. Pay it back to the family, to his brother, and pay it back with excellence, bi ihsan. Now how are you going to pay something back? You're going to earn. How are you going to earn? You're going to earn halal, because you have to pay it with what? Ihsan. You're going to do the best kind of work. You're going to earn an honest living. You're going to become a transformed human being in society, because this family gave you a chance. You're going to take that chance. You're going to run with it with ihsan. You're going to be a model citizen thereafter. The transformation and the reform of a criminal, of a murderer, is embedded inside the ayah, just inside one ayah. An entire sociology of the Quran inside just a few words. وَأَدَاءٌ إِلَيْهِ بِإِحْسَانٍ. He says, ذَلِكَ تَخْفِيفٌ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ وَرَحْمَةٌ. That is lightening the burden from you, from your Rabb. Allah has lightened for you. He's made things, instead of making them heavier, He's made things lighter for you. In other words, this person who is going to pay back, Allah Azza wa Jal is not making him criminalized for the rest of his life. If the victim's family has forgiven him, society has forgiven him. He doesn't wear that label the rest of his life. You know how we have in our justice system, you have a criminal background? Like if you've done time in jail or something like that, and you can't get a job the rest of your life, and you can't go into a certain school, and they'll look at your background and you're done for it. I mean, your past mistake will ruin your entire future. What does the Quran do? Allah says, if I've forgiven you, and if the people who have wronged you have forgiven you, then society should forgive you. You should be able to move on with your life. You've changed. Human beings are not always evil. Even the one who may have committed what? Murder. فَاتِّبَاعٌ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَأَدَاءٌ إِلَيْهِ بِإِحْسَانٍ ذَلِكَ تَخْفِيفٌ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ. That is a thing. That is a way to make light in society, to lessen in society from your Rabb. Now think about this. If you don't open that door, if you have criminals who are now forever until they die labeled as criminals, they have no path to reform, then you know what? If everybody tells me I'm a criminal, eventually I'm going to accept, yes, that's what I am. And then that's what you are, that's what you do, then the next crime becomes not harder, it becomes easier and easier and easier. Does crime spread in society or go down? Everybody suffers because this prohibition isn't there. ذَلِكَ تَخْفِيفٌ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ وَرَحْمَةٌ فَمَنْ اعْتَدَى بَعْدَ ذَلِكَ فَلَهُ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ. And there can be criminals who violate, even you give them a chance and they do other crimes. Then for the one who violates this after, then forget retribution, forget qisas, forget the forgiveness option from the family, then he gets painful punishment. فَلَهُ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ. In other words, there's no room for this kind of person. Repeated criminals, repeat offenders, then there's no room for the justice system to be lenient against them. Then you give them the toughest possible punishment, use the full extent of the law. So the Quran's picture of Islamic law, the hudud, is actually one in which people should be given a chance at first, and let them come back into society, make their way back into society. And if they keep repeating the offense and they get caught, then you know what? Then the full extent of the law. But our picture of Islamic law is, as soon as somebody makes a mistake, come here, let me chop his hand. Like we want to implement the full extent of the law the first chance we get. That's what we want to do. That is not the language of the Quran. That is not the implementation of Sharia. The implementation of Sharia is giving people chances in the beginning. If they made a mistake, give them a chance. Even in something so extreme, it's an opportunity to bring that up, so I'll bring it up. Even in something so extreme like zina. Zina is one of the worst crimes in Islam. It's put next to murder. وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الزِّنَا وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا النَّفْسِ لَا يَقْتُلُونَ النَّفْسَ الَّتِي حَرَّمَ اللَّهُ إِلَّا بِالْحَقِّ وَلَا يَزْنُونَ. قتل zina. They're next to each other in the Quran. It's serious crime. And yet Allah made a distinction between the married one who's committed zina and the unmarried one who's committed zina. And the unmarried one who's committed zina, there's the whipping, the lashing, and even then when you have four witnesses, and by the way, even after that, that's not the first thing that came down, by the way. The first thing that came down was in Surah An-Nisa. If they did commit the crime, فَاسْتَشْهِدُوا عَلَيْهِنَّ أَرْبَعَةً مِّنْكُمْ. If you can seek four witnesses against them, فَإِنْ شَهِدُوا. And if they did testify that these two people unmarried have committed zina, then what should you do? فَأَمْسِكُوهُنَّ فِي الْبُيُوتِ. Then keep those women inside the home. وَالَّذَانِ يَأْتِيَانِهَا مِنْكُمْ فَآذُوهُمَا. If two Muslim boy and girl have done it, then آذُوهُمَا, cause them pain. The language of the ayah, cause them pain. You know what that means, cause them pain? Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala, al-izdijar, yell at them. How could you do this? You should be ashamed of yourself. And everybody's yelling at them. And when you're done yelling at them, jane do, let them go. That was the early law in the Quran for zina. Because they're young and stupid and they made a big mistake. It's a big mistake, but you don't kill them. And you don't even whip them yet. Because society wasn't ready for that yet. But if you're so shameless and you're so reckless that you can do something as ugly as zina in public with 4 people watching, then you should get whipped. Then there should be punishment. That's serious business. And even then that whipping, that's Surah An-Nur. I won't go there. We're talking about murder right now. But I'm trying to tell you a principle in Sharia. Allah gives room in the beginning. Allah gives room. When the ayah said فَآذُوهُمَا in the ayat of zina, in the early ayat of zina in Surah An-Nisa, some of the Sahaba said, you know what we should do? We should make them lie down and we should take a stick and we should hit the bottom of their feet. Some said 10 times, some said 5 times. 5 is enough. Then let them go. Now don't do that again. Subhanallah. Because they didn't know how Allah left it open. And some just said, just yell at them and that should be okay. A couple said slap them and that should be fine. Subhanallah, like the conversations among the Sahaba about those ayat are amazing to read. Just amazing. And that's the law of Islam. But today when someone says, I want to implement Sharia, they should have a chainsaw in their hand ready. Because they're just, that this is what implementation of Sharia means. Allah says, الحر بالحر والعبد بالعبد والأنثى بالأنثى فمن عفي له من أخيه شيء فاتباع إليه بمعروف فاتباع بالمعروف وأداء إليه بإحسان ذلك تخفيف من ربكم ورحمة فمن اعتدى بعد ذلك فله عذاب أليم. Last thing about this ayah that I want to share with you. Very important. In modern justice system, we have something called a jury. A jury is an independent group of people that are not supposed to be privy to the case, and they kind of make a calling on the case. We found the defendant guilty, not guilty, etc. Right? Or there's a hung jury. But at the end of it all, the sentence, what should be the punishment? Where does it come from? Do you know? The punishment comes from the judge. And sometimes the judge says, I want to give you a life sentence. Sometimes the judge says, I want to give you the death penalty. Sometimes the judge says, I want to pardon you. Sometimes the judge says, there should be some kind of negotiation. Like, there's a guy from the mafia got caught, he killed like 10 people. He says, but I can give you names. I'll get you names. I'll get you everybody. So just give me protective custody and this and that. And he can cut a deal. Now he's not going to get the death penalty because he's got other people, other criminals he got caught. You understand? So there is room, flexible room inside the justice system. Not everybody gets the same punishment. It doesn't happen. And when he cuts a deal, or because he has a great lawyer, he gets off after 10 years, or whatever it is. You know who suffers? I don't suffer when I'm watching this on the news. Not directly anyway. The jury doesn't suffer. But in the court, there's a family sitting there. Family of who? The victim. They're sitting there crying. What kind of justice is this? How does he kill my son and then walk away after 10 years? How come nobody asked what I think? How can this be fair? How come they said they found him, guilty, but they're going to let him go after 6 months? Or after probation, or whatever else. The family's sitting there crying. Now don't tell them it's Sharia law, because Sharia law is barbaric. These animals. Just go to that family and say, imagine if there was an amendment in the Constitution that said that once guilt has been proven, once we know that this person has committed murder, and it's proven, that the justice system, the judge came to the family, the victim's family, and said, if you like, you have 3 options. You may sue the murderer, you may forgive the murderer, or you may ask for the death penalty. But we'll give you the option. We'll give you the option. Don't tell them it's Islam. Just tell them that those are your options. Or you can let the judge decide. And let the public defendant decide, or whatever. Let them make their deals. What would any family pick? Any family on the face of this earth. May Allah not put us in that situation. But if a family is in that situation, wouldn't they want to have a say in what should happen? Wouldn't they want to have a say? And many would want to forgive. There are people who attend the execution of the murderer and say, I forgive you. I mean, the system hasn't forgiven you, but I forgive him. I feel bad for him. If it were up to me, I'd let him go. They should be given that choice. They should be given that choice. It's actually very natural. The deen actually appeals to human nature. It appeals to human nature. It's very powerful. The only thing that's bad marketing for the deen is now the most beautiful word. Sharia, Islam, Islamic law. hudud. These terms, people hear them and they shiver and they get scared. Don't tell them it's Sharia. Don't tell them it's Islamic law. Just tell them what the rule is and they'll be like, yeah, that makes sense. Man, why don't we have that? Yeah, why don't we? Because Allah sent this to people, He knows who He created. أَلَا يَعْلَمُ مَنْ خَلَقَ. Doesn't He know who He created? He knows the nature of the human being. May Allah Azza wa Jal give us an appreciation of His perfect ahkam. And may Allah Azza wa Jal make all societies in the world societies of qisas so people can actually have justice. Barakallahu li wa lakum fil Qur'an al-Hakim. Wa nafa'ani wa iyyakum bil ayati wa dhikr al-Hakim. Now inshallah